Hey everyone, my name is Gaurav and welcome to this Mammoth webinar. I am very excited uh, to show you what we built. Quick backstory before we begin. About 20 years ago, when I was this young software engineer in San Francisco at this large consulting company, I was pulling in some late nights. And I distinctly remember this one evening, I was up at 2 a.m. and I was working with this Microsoft technology called SSIS, and it's a way to transform data. And I think people in the data world are possibly familiar with it. And I just kept thinking, this is super frustrating. It is clunky, it's complex, and it's like this has got to be a better way. There has to be a simpler way. And that was 20 years ago. And fast forward to today, and I talked to a lot of people in the world of data. And despite this world of AI and all these BI tools, managing data is still a painful and a frustrating process. So I'm very excited about this webinar because at Mammoth, we have a solution that addresses this head on, this problem. And while we believe that, we personally in Mammoth believe that, so there's a sort of a possibly a biased view, but our customers tell us that. And these are serious customers, they're banks and large enterprises. So I'm very excited about this. So quick background at Mammoth, we started as a sort of a hybrid service and a product company. We've shifted more towards the product side late last year. We serve a bunch of, we're lucky to serve a bunch of incredible clients, and we've solved some interesting problems with them. And these problems that we've solved, they're complex data problems, and it's kind of shaped the product the way it is today. This is the high-level agenda of what we'll cover. Just a couple of slides, and then we'll dive into the demo. And I do want to talk a little bit about the problem and solution because we have a unique angle to that, so the solution is also relatively unique. And just a quick overview. The way we look at data in Mammoth is a journey, and at the end of the journey, you have your insights. It could be a Power BI dashboard, it could be some AI output. But in the beginning, most data for most companies is either messy or siloed or both. And to get from raw data to insights is never just a click of a button. You have to go through a bunch of different steps. And what Mammoth does is it accelerates this whole process. And it does that in two ways. One, provides this one platform that covers a lot of ground, from warehousing to discovery to data cleansing to just basic analytics to exporting to various places. And so the problem we're solving there is just fragmentation. Today, you have to use all these different tech to achieve the same. Secondly, our goal is to empower the right people with the right set of tools. And typically, the person who understands the data really well is a business person and the knowledge worker, and that profile is typically not technical. So just to hone in a little bit on the problem here, most of the time is spent in data prep, very little on insights. And the problem there isn't purely about time lost. It's also about this inability for organizations to be nimble and agile with their decision making. And to drill down a little bit further, this typical setup in most of these organizations is, and there are different variations to this, but essentially you have someone here who understands, who has the questions, but doesn't have the ability to get the answers. And then this group here, the engineering group, has the ability to get the answers, but they don't hold the question. So there's a lot of back and forth and inefficient process. And then there's a set of fragmented technologies to use. And then, the key problem here is this feedback loop is incredibly long. And with Mammoth, what we do is we reduce that feedback loop drastically. And the way we do this is firstly by providing this one platform that covers a lot of ground. And then secondly, we provide all the tools needed so there's no more back and forth. And we provide these tools in an easy to use manner, so there's no more back and forth. Now, having the short feedback loop is a big deal. It's not just about time savings. It's about this ability to ask questions, get answers, ask better questions immediately, get better answers. So there's this compounding effect to this setup. So let's get into the demo. Just an overview, what we'll do, we'll cover the different ways to integrate data. There's this ability to explore and find out what is right or wrong with your data. Tools for doing basic transformation and or complex ones, and then how you can create these automated pipelines. And then there's the world of AI that we're super excited about, showing you some of these features. And we're going to do all of this stuff without writing code. So let us dive into this. I have created a couple of these slides in super large font just so that we can have this as a reference here. And let me move this. Okay, so firstly, the Mammoth platform, it's a cloud-based product. And the benefits of the cloud are twofold. One, it's a scalable solution, so whether it's 10,000 rows or 100 million rows, it scales. You're not dependent on the processing of your laptop. And then secondly, it's a single source of truth. So whether it's, so you don't have the problem of multiple files sitting in different places. So what I can do as a starting point is bring data from various places. So what I'm going to do is just cover some high-level concepts, and we'll do a couple of interesting exercises here. So I'm just going to show you what this ability to add data looks like. So here I can drag and drop Excel files, CSV files. Webhooks is a way of bringing event-based data into the platform. We can connect to a couple of hundred different types of these connectors. It's point and click, code free, and we can get into this if we have time or if any specific questions around this. But I just want to get into the meat of what happens when data comes into the Mammoth platform. So let me get into one of these folders here. Okay, so just as a quick recap on these things here, what we're going to do, integrating multiple sources, discovering, transforming, AI, automation, all that stuff we'll cover, not in any specific order, just we'll just do an ad hoc approach towards this. So I'm going to start off with this one data set. And so this is sort of a starting point. This data happens to be coming from a building management system. So what I can start doing right away is looking at what it's all about. So I'm just clicking on a couple of these things here, and these columns, and I can see sort of the landscape of what this data is all about. I can see that there are 10,000 rows in July. Jan's pretty low, so let's look at that. So I'm just going to start double clicking and filtering into this. So I can see the data actually started on the 13th of Jan. So essentially, what we're doing is a bit of investigation. Instead of writing SQL, I'm just doing a point and click approach towards the same thing. So I'm just going to click on a couple of more items here, and everything to the right and to the bottom is relative to that. And so I can keep drilling in, right? So, and we internally have a team of engineers who know Python, SQL really well, but this is the preferred way of when you want to actually investigate your data, right? And this is important because, and it's not a replacement for your Power BI or Tableau. It is an important method to investigate and figure out what may be right or wrong with your data, which then helps you prepare your data. So here I can see that there are different spellings of ad hoc, electricity and things like that. And even here, there are different sort of spellings for contractors, and there's some of the same people. So this is your classic garbage in, garbage out problem. And we have the likes of Starbucks who faces this, small businesses face this, and this affects data quality. So what we can do in Mammoth is start transforming this data right away. So for example, if we want to try and clean this up, if I click on this transform button, there are a whole bunch of different code-free functions to manage this or to transform or reshape. And this is like a 15-minute learning curve. And what I will do in this specific example is, let's use this AI-powered function here called bulk replace. And so if I select this amenity column, it's showing me a list of all the items that I can group together. So let's maybe, we can group these into one and then start creating these different groups. But it's actually suggesting these 4 groupings here. So let me just go ahead and add all of these in. So here I can see different items. And then, I can also add some more. So maybe we add this, all this to a new group, right? So I can modify this to whatever I want. Maybe we call this just water all floors, and then apply that one. And then I'm just going to hit next and hit apply. And so what you'll notice is in these 21 unique values here, that will change. So now you have 14 values, and on the left-hand side, what you have is a step in the pipeline. So any new data coming in, it just goes through the flow, so you don't have to do it again. So just as a recap, what we did was we discovered that there was a problem. We have a solution to that problem, and that solution is now part of an automated pipeline. I mean, and we did this in a couple of minutes, right, or less. So what I'm going to show you now is just maybe a more built-out example of what this looks like. So here you have a bunch of different transformations that were applied. And ultimately, what you can do is either send this out into different destinations or have various destinations pull from Mammoth. In this example, we've auto-created this Postgres connection. So if I show the credentials here, there are so different systems can just pull from here. So the various ways to sort of send your data out. And ultimately, you can think of Mammoth as a sort of a lightweight transformation layer that sits between your one source or multiple sources and sends it to whichever destination you need it to be. Now, just a quick story on this. I had one of our clients spent, I don't know, he created like these pipelines, maybe 20 or 30 of these different pipelines on this data. And I was chatting with him, and he's this Python programmer, and SQL and things like that. So I was asking him why he was doing it in Mammoth. His answer was it wasn't for him, it was for his customer success team. So basically, whether you're technical or not, once you create this pipeline, then the maintenance of it can be anyone. And in his case, his customer success team would manage this, and they would make whatever changes they would need to. And so he was no longer the bottleneck. And so it's one of the key benefits, which I'm going to get back into, which I'm going to talk about in one of the next or subsequent slides. We have another concept, which is views. You can create multiple views of your data, which is multiple pipelines from the same source. And that's a very common and popular feature. And I'm just going to do a couple of different exercises to show you some other really interesting features. and then we'll do, and so this is kind of low level stuff, and we'll talk about the high level of what happens when you take a sort of a bird's eye view on this. So I'm just going to open up this one data set here. So there's the customer list and these customer transactions. So basically, customer transactions have so I've stripped down all the extraneous columns just for the sake of this demo. And this is sample data, by the way. So the customer transactions have a column called customer ID, and that customer list and the ID is here. It so happens these customers are shops and vendors, and they have websites and categories and things like that. So, if we take a quick look here, this is the kind of data. And so what I'm noticing here is that there is the phone number column. And so let's try and figure out what the city and state is just based on this phone number, right? So I'm going to use this transform function. And we have this newly built, sort of fresh out the presses, GenAI function here. So I'm just going to say, hey, give me the city and state. Well, let's see if that works. I'm just going to use phone number as to evaluate. I'm just going to hit preview here. So this is evaluating basically this column here. And let's see if this works. Yep, looks like it. So let's go ahead and create a new column called city state. And I'm just going to hit apply. And so what it should do is create one brand new column called city state. And it should fill it up with the city and state based on these, on the area code of this phone number. So, okay, great, it's done that. Let's split this actually into city and state. So I'm just gonna go to this column menu here, and there are a bunch of different functions, and you can basically access all these through this transform menu. It's just that this is a sort of a shortcut. So I'm just gonna split this column, and we have a delimiter or the separator, which is a comma. Let's keep that, and let's create two columns called city and state, right? I'm just gonna apply that. And now it should just give me two extra columns here, right? And so now let's do this. So we have a couple of different address columns. Let's put it all together into a single address column. And I want to show you this one super cool feature. And I could do that using this column management and this combined multiple columns. But we have this other new feature that it's called SQL query, where I can just type in my intent. So I can just say, give me, or give me, I can say consolidate all the address fields into one and put it in a new column called address. So just simple English, and what it's going to do is hopefully generate the right SQL. So it's now picked up, including these new columns that we just created, right? And I'm just going to hit apply. And what it should do is create a brand new column called address. And there you go. So this is a super cool function. It's very powerful. You just have an intent, and then that just generates SQL. Really cool. Okay, so one other thing, final thing we'll do is we have this customer transaction table. And this has a customer ID, and all the customers are here. So let's try and bring it into this customer transaction. So that we do via a join or a lookup. So I'm going to click this transform menu, go to unify, here, and there's this join or lookup function. I'm just going to hit join, and I can select the customer list, that view, and so this is my current one, and then this is the customer list that we just created, the address and city and state. And so the common key here is customer ID and ID. So let me just select those. And then just FYI, there are these different ways to join the data. So, we have documentation on this for people who don't understand these concepts. But a typical join in this situation is a left join. And I can now we can bring all this data in, right? And so I'm just going to apply. And what we'll see is in this customer transactions, some new columns should show up. And so that's my data here. And then this is my join rule. And, I can start looking at this data in various ways. Again, actually, one thing I forgot to do, what I really wanted was just a domain name and not all this extra stuff. So I could fix it here, or I could just fix it here, and let's see if that gets reflected. So let me just go back and go back to this vendor website, and let us extract text. And what I'll just say domain name, just like that, and it generates hopefully the right regex, which is this. Looks right to me. Let's, instead of putting it in a new column name, let's just update the same one. Just going to hit existing website or existing column. So vendor website, I'm just going to hit apply there. And so since we've updated the source, this should now get reflected. So let's see. There you go. So yeah, basically, this is just tip of the iceberg in terms of the capabilities of Mammoth. But what we talked about, we kind of went into some of these functions. But once you start building up on this, you can do a lot. And let me just go back to my slides. And basically what I showed you was going from possibly unclean data and getting it shaped in a certain way. What you can do, and what most of our customers do, is take completely disparate data, different schemas, different column structures, things like that, and you can put it together. And so what that looks like is something along these lines, where you have Mammoth that sits as a transformation layer between all your sources and then your output. The key difference between Mammoth versus any other platform, and because this is done day in, day out, using other tools as well. And what's the difference between Mammoth? The key difference is that Mammoth sits close to the decision maker because of the transparency of those pipelines, the visibility of what's going on, this ability to modify it on the fly. So you no longer have IT as a bottleneck, and so this can sit in the various departmental levels. And so just as a recap, or just talking about some of the benefits, as I mentioned, it's a centralized layer that sits at closer to the decision makers. You get clear transparency, auditability on what's going on. One thing I didn't talk about or mention is you can kind of traverse back into those rules and go back to a different version of your data at any point. So this reduced IT dependency might seem like a negative for IT, but I come from that world, and it is a blessing. So, the engineering team can focus more on the deep tech projects, and they're no longer have to do the back and forth with the business team. So this is like a great thing for both groups. And then, once you start with one connector or 3 connectors or 5 connectors and start building these pipelines, it's very easy to add more and more to this without much disruption. And speaking of disruption, this is just a thin layer. It doesn't, in a lot of cases, Mammoth sits alongside Alteryx. It sits alongside Power BI and on all these different tools. So what it typically does is it replaces sometimes these crazy Excel, the Excel mess, and you can kind of take all that Excel mess and put it into the Mammoth system. And ultimately, for any company who's trying to be AI ready, you kind of need your data in one place. You need it relatively clean. You need it standardized. And what AI engineers want to do is build the algorithms. They don't want to spend time cleaning and standardizing data. So Mammoth helps with that process quite a bit. I think it's 1 or 2 more slides. Yeah, I think that's it, the last slide. So I do want to talk about the Starbucks case study for a minute. When we started talking to Starbucks, they were getting disparate data, sales data from different countries. So the way mocha is spelt in Germany is different than Turkey. It's Turkish lira, Swiss francs, and euros, and so you have one layer of truth that's true. Mocha is spelled differently and is different currencies. But then you need, by the time it gets to the executive team, you kind of need a different version, a standardized version. And the mocha and the euro example is just one out of probably 100 or 150 different rules that were applied. So before Mammoth, all this was done as a one-off in Excel, and it's a non-repeatable process, and Excel couldn't handle all that data, so it was broken up into multiple files, and it was a real mess. It's super error-prone, and so once we put all these rules into Mammoth, you could scale, and so it's a fairly game-changing project just in terms of this ability to get faster insights. And that is it. Love to open it up to any questions anyone has. And Jeff, can I hand this over to you as well?
Yeah, I have a question. And it seems like we have quite a few questions from Eslam in Cairo. Why wouldn't AI just replace what we're doing? The thought came to my mind that might be a question a lot of people have. Why do you think?
Yeah, I had this interesting discussion with a friend. I think there's going to be a time when AI will help you fold your laundry and it'll iron clothes and all that stuff. And the output you get out of that robotic process, you don't care how it did it. You just care about that final result.
Yep.
In this space, in the world of data, you really care about how you go from this raw data to insights. You want to know how any of these processes happen. You want to be able to investigate. So you don't want a black box solution. And right now, if you put stuff into ChatGPT and you get something out, it's relatively black box, maybe a bunch of code. It's not easy to understand. And so, as I showed, AI plays a big role in the Mammoth world, and we're going to accelerate that even more. But the framework of being able to see what happened, having a repeatable set of steps, having just general visibility, it will be key even in the AI.
Well, let's answer some of Eslam's questions. his first question was, what can Mammoth Analytics be ideal for, or in what industry can its application fit the most?
Yeah, so we have a whole bunch of clients, and this is across multiple, like from consumer goods to biotech to banks. Ultimately, it's an agnostic platform. As you saw, Islam, it doesn't really care. It doesn't. Mammoth by itself doesn't have knowledge as to which industry or which type of file it is. You can just perform a whole bunch of transformations on it. So it's fairly agnostic. It works across multiple verticals. We are focused quite a bit on the consumer goods and a couple of supply chain and biotech.
Another question: can this be applied on large companies with huge data sets?
Yeah. So our solution is a relatively big data solution, and we definitely pick up where Excel stops. So Excel has limitations of like a couple of million or maybe 2 million rows. For us, the limitations, we start hitting a wall over like a couple of billion rows. If you deal with terabytes of data, then maybe there's another solution. But essentially, because we sit more at the departmental level and not necessarily at a centralized level, Mammoth doesn't host all the pieces of data. It's not a replacement for your data lake or data warehouse, but it definitely deals with large volumes of data.
Here's another question from the audience. How can using the platform be totally IT independent? Yeah. So to what extent does reduced IT dependency go? Like, how do you characterize that?
Yeah, I actually might have a slide that covers this, which is kind of an interesting perspective. So there's this concept of a centralized model versus decentralized, and there are pros and cons, right? So this is sort of your typical centralized model where this is your IT department. You have a bunch of tools in there, and there are serious positives to having a centralized system, but there are also some negatives where you essentially this team, any of these different departments have to now depend, and that slows things down quite a bit. With a decentralized approach, that's where Mammoth comes in and plays a role, where we don't disrupt the existing systems. We enable the different departments. And so we kind of are complementary to most of these existing solutions, and we're complementary to the IT and engineering effort, where there's no longer this burden of being that bottleneck.
Thanks. There's a question from George. Is there any use case for digital marketing for creating a user identification of different sources?
Yeah, we have a couple of clients who use Mammoth for plugging into their marketing systems. So theoretically, yes, George. It's just, I think we'd have to get into the details and figure out, but the answer would be yes.
And a question from Mike: can you speak to the security and governance of Mammoth? I mean, I'm sure that's an important question a lot of people have.
Yeah, we went through the ringer on this one, especially when we signed up a bank, and yeah, at Mammoth we have a bunch of credentials. We're SOC 2, ISO 27001, HIPAA, GDPR, and then we just recently went through this whole AWS foundational technical review. So we're heavily an AWS customer as well, and we sit in the world of AWS. So there's security on multiple levels, yeah. So just the fact that we've gone through these large enterprise sort of procurement processes, we've kind of passed that, and so security is not a concern. And one thing is that right now, the platform is on the cloud, is sort of a cloud that we own. And even though the client's data sits sort of isolated and they own that data, we also have clients where the Mammoth platform is deployed behind their firewall. So that's a solution as well.
Thanks, Carl. Here's another question. Why use Mammoth if you're using Power Query or Power BI?
Yeah, so to go from raw data to your pretty charts, you have to do transformation of data at some level. And right now, with Power Query and Power BI, the DAX world, you can do it. It's a technical exercise. And just going back to that ability to audit, ability to maintain, the big question is do you want that ownership to be more on the technical side where that becomes a bottleneck, or are you able to keep it at more the departmental level of the business layer?
Let's see. Another question from George. I think he's looking at details around this. So PCI-DSS, I have to put my glasses back on. Can you see the question? GDPR, HIPAA, details about security.
Yeah. I can George, I can send that. I think we're connected on LinkedIn. So the answer is yes to all those.
Yeah. Any last questions before we close the webinar? And we will be sending around the recording to everyone, so you'll have that. You're welcome, George. And Eslam, I see your message. Appreciate it. Okay. Well, thank you very much for coming. Thanks for the presentation.
Thanks.
Really,
everyone.
yeah, fantastic. All right.
Awesome.
Bye.
Take care.